In the early 1990s, a series of disappearances of young women began in Iowa. All the victims were around the same age, between 18 and 25. They were later found dead in wooded areas near highways. At first, police thought these were accidents, but soon, forensic examinations revealed the truth. All the women had been murdered in the same way, strangled with a rope made from canvas cord. The main detail that linked the crimes: the victims always disappeared near gas stations or roadside diners. Security cameras were rare back then, and there were few witnesses. The only lead investigators had was that the women had last been seen with a man driving a gray pickup truck. In 1995, police finally caught a break. At one gas station, they found a cigarette butt with DNA. The sample matched a local resident, Daniel Crawford, a 42-year-old mechanic. Everyone knew him. Quiet, withdrawn, always driving his old gray pickup. Neighbors described him as strange, but harmless. When police came with a search warrant, they uncovered horrifying evidence in his garage: personal belongings of the missing women, scraps of their clothing, and maps with marked locations where the bodies were later discovered. On the garage walls hung dozens of photographs of his victims, taken secretly long before the abductions. Daniel was arrested. During interrogations, he remained silent. Only once did he say, "They came to me on their own. I was just giving them a ride." At the trial, it was revealed that Crawford had been hunting his victims for years. He would offer them a lift or help with their car, then take them to his garage, where he tormented and killed them. Investigators proved at least 12 murders, but suspected the real number was twice as high. In 1997, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. In prison, he refused to interact with other inmates and spent most of his time in solitary. In 2003, he was found dead in his cell. He had hanged himself with the same canvas cord he had used to strangle his victims. To this day, people in Iowa still remember him as the Hunter from Iowa, a man who hid behind the mask of a quiet mechanic, but was in reality one of the most brutal serial killers in the state's history. On an abandoned stretch of Route 66, there's a house no one dares to live in. Locals say it's cursed, but every year, someone goes inside, and not all of them come back. In 2015, two friends, Liam and Josh, drove out there to film a creepy exploration for their channel. The house looked ordinary at first. Broken windows, peeling wallpaper, piles of dust. Just another ruin. But on the floor, they noticed something strange. Footprints, bare, small, like a child's. The prints led into the next room, but when they looked inside, the room was empty. Upstairs, Liam recorded himself in the reflection of an old wardrobe mirror. Later, while editing, they noticed something terrifying. Behind him stood a woman. Her face was blurred, her dress was torn, and her eyes completely black. The next night, they went back. This time, the house wasn't the same. In the living room was a table, freshly set with plates and silverware, surrounded by dust and cobwebs, as if someone was expecting guests. Then, footsteps on the stairs, light at first, almost like a child. Then, heavier, slower, one after another, figures emerged from the darkness. Men, women, children, dirty, broken, pale, with twisted necks and empty eyes. They didn't look at the boys. They just walked silently to the table and sat down. Last came a man, tall, in a blood-stained suit, his face hidden under a burlap mask. He stopped in the doorway, looked straight into the camera and said in a low voice, "Now, you stay too." The recording ends with the sound of the camera hitting the floor, then footsteps, chairs scraping, and the faint laughter of a child. A week later, hikers found the camera lying on the side of Route 66. Liam and Josh were never seen again. In a small town in Ohio, there was an old high school. The building was falling apart, and the basement hadn't been renovated since the 1960s. The district wanted to shut it down, but there wasn't enough money, so students kept studying there. The main character is Emily, a senior. One evening she stayed after class to help her teacher gather some papers. The halls grew silent as the school emptied. The silence was so heavy that even the smallest sound echoed. When Emily stepped into the hallway, she noticed the lights flickering at the far end. They buzzed, as if they were about to die out. She quickened her pace. Then suddenly the school bell rang, sharp, piercing. But classes had ended hours ago. Emily turned. The gym door stood slightly open. She was sure her teacher had locked it. Peeking inside, she saw nothing, just an empty floor. But on the basketball court, fresh, wet footprints trailed across the wooden floor. She decided to find the security guard. Heading downstairs, she heard laughter, childlike, soft, but strange. It didn't sound like it came from the hall. It came from inside the walls. "Who's there?" Emily called out, her voice trembling. The answer was the bell again, but this time it rang longer, unnaturally long. Then all at once, the lights went out. The school was plunged into darkness. Only the dim red glow of emergency lights lit her path. She ran to the exit. The doors were chained shut. Her hands shook as she yanked at the lock. Suddenly, a classroom door slammed behind her. Footsteps echoed, heavy, not a child's. Emily froze, her heart hammering in her chest. Then a voice, low, metallic, as if coming from an old radio, whispered, "Go back to class." She screamed and bolted up the stairs. On the second floor, the lights flickered, and for a split second, she saw them. Dozens of children in 1960s school uniforms. Their faces were blurred, gray, like faded photographs. They stood still, except for one boy who raised his hand and pointed directly at her. At that moment, the bell rang again, this time right in her ear. Emily fell to the ground, covering her head. When she opened her eyes, she was lying in the middle of the gym, alone, silent. The old wooden floor creaked beneath her. She rushed outside and realized it was morning. She had spent the whole night inside, though it had felt like only minutes. The next day, Emily never came to school. When her teacher called her parents, they said she hadn't come home at all. And ever since, people say the old school bell rings at night, too long, too loud. And anyone who dares to stay after hours swears they hear children laughing echoing through the halls. The school was never shut down, but no one stays there after the last bell.